Hello and welcome to Sophisticulture. I am your host, UMNIA. We have a pre-recorded episode today with a very, very cool guest. Maddy Myer, who is the host of brand new podcast Maddy Mania, came to join us to talk about Katseye, wrestling, and her new podcast. And here is me doing the intro of the podcast, and then I will be back at the end after the pre-recorded segment to discuss my hot take of the week and a couple of other bits of news, because we had a bit of a issue at the BAFTAs. I don't know if you've heard, but the BAFTAs did not go off without a hitch, and it is looking increasingly as if this was potentially intentional on the part of the BBC. Now, whether or not we can ever prove that is the beautiful wiliness of the British media ecosystem, and no one can really want this to be intentional. But in the meantime, what I wanted to throw to is our discussion with Maddy, which was a lot more lighthearted. Good nerding out, which is what I love to see. Black women nerding out in public 2026. I'm starting a movement. Black women in nerd spaces, much louder 2026. Amen? That's what I want to see. That's what I want to hear. So without further ado, here is our conversation with Maddy Myer of Maddy Mania. You can find all the details for the podcast and her Instagram for the podcast in the description below. And yeah, have a listen. Enjoy. We are here with Maddy Myer, who has just started this amazing podcast called Maddy Mania. I was just saying before the call started how cool it is that we've got people doing the fandom thing, being in the fandom space that actually look like the people that I share fandom spaces with. So, Maddy, tell us a bit about the podcast, why you started it, what you guys are going to be chatting about on the podcast, topics and stuff like that.
For sure. Well, first, just thank you for having me. I feel the same way. We got to stick together, so love that. Yeah, but I started Maddy Mania for two reasons. One is like the more business mindset of it, and then the other is like the passion side of it. So from a business perspective, I'm in public relations and do a little bit of like freelance journalism on the side. And so I have that like industry perspective, and I knew from like the age of 19 that I wanted to start my own PR agency eventually that was like sports and entertainment focused. So I feel like starting the podcast is like step one to that. One, becoming a little bit more like public facing and not as behind the scenes so that I could work to opening my own agency. But two, just having something that's like my own and my own IP that I created and started that I can look back on and know that like I started from the ground up, and hopefully it like gets to pretty cool heights. So that's like the business side of it. And then the like passion side of it is I feel like I've always had like different interests that labeled me as like weird or whatever growing up, because one, these people like I guess they didn't have anything they were passionate about at the time, or two, they just like didn't recognize that this like Black female was the person that was loving these things. Like whether
oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I'm in this photo. I don't like it.
Right? No, literally. And it's like getting bullied for liking wrestling and like Broadway or whatever.
Because I'm gonna get into the wrestling thing in a second, because I had a big wrestling phase for like years and years and years of my life, and it still shocks me. I used to have WWE Network, and now they're on Netflix.
Yeah.
Or, like, do you know what I would have killed to have?
Back then?
WWE on Netflix. Oh gosh, trolling the worst websites imaginable, trying to get the latest episode of Raw. Oh my gosh. Anyway, but yes, continue.
Yeah, so just wanted a space where I could like yap about these interests, and I feel like my mom and best friend can only take so much, and they need a break every once in a while. So to have like my own dedicated space to kind of just talk about these things and hopefully find like-minded individuals that feel the same and like want to listen in, and hopefully build community from listening to the pod.
Nice. I love it. And I do want to get into the WWE, the wrestling generally of it all, because if you're a real wrestling head, it's not just WWE, there's AEW, there's all sorts. But I did want to quickly, because this is a fandom podcast, Maddy Mania is going to be a fandom podcast generally about all the different types of things in culture that are being discussed around kind of passionate fandom. I did want to ask you, because you did mention you might want to speak about the situation with Manon and Katseye. Now, I'm a big K-pop head. I've been a K-pop head since
too.
back with 21. Like I am CL Hive, right? Old school,
I'm a
girls'
Blake.
generation. Yeah, right? What you know about Sonyeon Shide? Huh? What you know about girls' generation? Like, I'm old school. I've not been paying attention to Katseye like that. So I
Mm,
only know that they were set up by this kind of talent show that I think was like a hybrid between an American label and a K-pop label. And I know that now Manon is technically on hiatus, but they said she was on hiatus for health reasons, and she's like, I'm healthy. And I'm just seeing a black girl in the public eye, and something's going wrong, and immediately my red flags are raised, my hackles are up.
yeah.
Educate me, Maddie. What's happening?
So yeah, you're pretty much right. It was from like the typical K-pop system of like forming a girl group, but they're with Hype and Geffen, which is like Interscope, UMG, that
Yep.
like
Oh gosh, and that's the ultimate big monster if you know about labels and history of labels. That's crazy. Okay, so
yeah,
Geffen.
so that's who formed them. And from like whenever you watch the reality show, which I think was like the wrong step, or they should have at least edited it differently, is like you could tell that some of the girls like had not had it out for Manon, but like she got sick a bit and had to like skip out on some things. And I think some of the girls were like more used to that K-pop mentality of like, even if you're sick, you push through kind of thing, you
Mm,
know?
mm,
And so they had like an episode where they were like in this circle talking about like why they feel like she gets to miss practices and stuff. And it was just like really awkward to put on a reality show that's about forming this girl group, and then she ends up in the girl group, and it's like, okay, why would you even show that? And so it was
mm,
like it was messy from the start with that. And then like once Katseye was formed, like it was clear that she was the most popular member. And like I feel like that is similar to K-pop. Like there's always one most of the time that's like
mm-hmm.
than the others. Except in the case of Blackpink, which they're my ults, I think they're all four like on their own solo as popular as the group. But
Yeah.
um
But do you
yeah.
feel okay, this is a quick a Blackpink tangent. I feel like that was a specific structure set up by YG because I remember
Really?
when they first debuted, each of them ended up getting a deal with a fashion house. Each of them had a very specific angle at debut. I know a lot of different bands have that same thing. A lot of different groups have that same thing, but not since I think of it in terms of like you can launch each member in a way and have each of them have a following, but the way Blackpink was set up was like there was always this sense that all four of them were like it was like a super group who hadn't even been a group yet. Like it was
Yeah.
meant to be this powerhouse, and I remember even pre-debut, there was like buzz about all four of them because they'd been in all these trainee videos, and so I
Yeah.
like my sense of it is that it has to be concerted on the part of the label to make
It,
sure that everyone is instead of just kind of going, okay, we're throwing 5 girls or 6 girls at the audience, let's see who they like, instead kind of making sure that everybody has that equal promotion. I don't know how you feel about it.
yeah, I mean, I definitely think so. They did like before the reality show, it was like you did get to like vote and stuff. So that is like I'm pretty sure if I'm remembering correctly, it's like every person had the like judges from the show, like the mentors from Hybe and Geffen, as well as like the fans voting on Weverse, I'm pretty sure. So
Got you.
it was like both sides, but I think like with girl groups, it's not only just that, it's like making sure there's chemistry. And I thought there was until this happened. And now I'm like second guessing.
Do we know what's happened? Do we think it's a publicity stunt? I know some people are saying that.
I don't think, from a publicist perspective, I don't think it's publicity stunt because they're already popular. They're freaking Grammy nominated in like their debut year. So
Yeah.
I don't think they need this kind of publicity where it's like they weren't talked about before because they were. I think it's like they didn't think through how popular she was, how she would have support, not just from being like the most popular member, but from the Black community and, We Fight Hard, and
Mm,
that it's like both, like it's two labels involved that have done um, artists dirty in the past. So I think it's like we're not buying the she's on a hiatus for her mental health, especially like you said, when she's posting and she's like she's fine. So it's definitely like I don't think it was a her decision thing. I think it was
yeah,
like definitely upper level management made the decision for her, and she
yeah,
was under contract and couldn't do anything about it. She just had to listen to what they said, and, like, at this point, I think it's blown up so much that
mm,
even if she does come back from said hiatus, I don't think it's gonna be the same. The fandom, as you know, K-pop fandoms are intense, and they're gonna overanalyze everything in the group even more so than they did before. Um, I think, like I don't know. I don't know what happens after this. Like, they've fucked this up so hard and so bad, and, like, if I was them, I'd be shaking in my boots
yeah,
because, like, not only are the icons involved, it's like I said, it's the Black community, it's, like, other artist fandoms who are like, "I don't even know Katseye, but, like, I'm riding for Manon," because
yeah.
it's just like, we've seen this before, and um, it never gets easier, and they did it in Black History Month, and I'm
Like,
like,
I mean, like it's the like so much has happened this Black History Month for me that is just like egregious. For to
mhm,
have the BAFTAs thing and Manon, and there's all sorts of like I just feel it's bad on top of it being incredibly racist. Awful timing. Awful timing. I was gonna say, for those that don't know, Hybe, the K-pop side of this deal, used to be Big Hit. It is
mhm,
the label that BTS built. And like it's not crazy to say that BTS built Hybe as a foundation, as a business, into something that was profitable, into something that was huge. And they were the ones that made the international switch for that label that allowed for an environment to build so that Cat's Eye could be made. And the reason I say this is I believe I heard from someone recently that despite all of that work and the huge amount of success that BTS have brought to Hybe, they have no stake in that label. After all this time, after all of that work they put in, they have no stake in the label and no financial ties, no benefit to being part of that. And that is just how when people say, oh, that's how K-pop works, K-pop is so exploitative, that's how the music industry works. Geffen is tied to Interscope, is tied to UMG. If you have liked any pop girly in the past 20 years and beyond, it's come out of that system. And the ways those labels treated those artists, these are those labels. That treatment
yep,
is this treatment, right? I was having this discussion with someone the other day, a friend of mine, and she was like, it's just so terrible, the K-pop system. And I'm like, the K-pop system learned it from somewhere. Like a lot of these labels have built these structures, have built these contracts based on the way the Western pop industry works. And the lack of
yeah,
agency
and I
and the
think
lack of
it's like
ownership. Yeah,
I think it's like the reason people say that is because we have more access to like how it is in the K-pop side of things because of how much they give fan service with whether it's like behind the scenes videos or like a whole reality show, whereas I feel like it's very hard to come by to something like that in the Western industry.
completely agree. I completely agree. I think it's also partially on the Western side of things by design, how little is given away. And it's part of what drew me to K-pop. And I think what draws a lot of people to K-pop is that access and that relatability. And though, you can sit and say, oh, it's all kind of for performance or it's all for kind of building an audience, it is honestly much more exciting. It feels much more you feel you're getting a much more rich experience. The other thing I've always found in K-pop spaces is I feel that artists respect their audience more and
Mhm.
think a lot about that reciprocal engagement. Does it become parasocial and crazy and sassing and stuff? Of course. And that's a whole other side of things. But what I've always loved about K-pop is the ways that artists look or love their audience, and in return, the audience kind of shows up extra for their artists. But it's an incredibly imperfect industry, and I think I was shocked when I found out about Katseye's debut that we were doing the thing of having, girls of color in K-pop groups, which has happened a couple of times before and not been very successful because there was a lot of racism,
Mhm.
not just in Korea, but in international communities of K-pop fans as well. So I was like, oh my gosh, yay, this is cool. This is a new frontier. And yet now we're seeing a repetition now of that again, which is so
Yeah,
depressing,
I know.
because I thought we'd,
2026
yeah.
and 2026 and it's not so different from 2016, not in the cool
Yeah.
ways, but also in the bad ways.
In the bad ways. How are we gonna get past this time loop? It's bonkers. Anyway, yeah, thank you for letting us know all of that, specifically me, because I only knew parts of it. I've gotten bits and pieces of data from people, but I'd never been fully into Katseye. As a Blink, though, I should mention really quickly, like what's currently going on with the last time I checked in with Blackpink, they'd made a video with AI. What are they up to right now as a
Wait,
group?
they literally have a comeback tomorrow.
No way! That's so cool.
Deadline is dropping a mini album with they already released Jump last year, which is gonna be a song on there. You know how YG does with them. They get like
Mm.
5 songs and one of them is always like a remix or something that's already out. So same kind of vibe, the usual. I don't know why they stayed with YG as a group. I feel like they could have as a group gone somewhere else. Um
Did their contract come up?
it was a couple years ago, like whenever
Was it?
they like right before they started all their solo stuff. But they renewed as a group with YG.
Oh
Yeah. They're
wow.
like they're all in different labels for their solo stuff.
I didn't realize. Oh, that makes sense because suddenly Lisa was everywhere for a little while. I was like, okay. Oh, randomly YG nailing it. No, clearly it must have been different label entirely. 'Cause YG would have never done that. The other thing I was thinking is, oh my gosh, so much time has passed. If the contract is up, that's a 10-year contract. That's wow. Time flies when you're waiting for one little crumb from Blackpink. Just something.
No,
Okay,
literally.
so Maddie, tell us a bit more about Maddy Mania, other than obviously Maddy Mania is very clearly a reference to wrestling, WrestleMania. Um,
Of
Tell us a bit
course.
more about, I know you've got the first episode coming out March 5th?
Mhm.
March 5th! And you've got a launch party happening in the next week as well. Tell everyone a bit about that.
Yeah, so March 5th, we're gonna come out with a wrestling episode as the first one. I feel like people know me for that the most. Like that's my most like public facing part of my identity is like I love wrestling. And you're right, that's why I did the whole Maddy Mania name. So it's gonna be a wrestling episode with a former TNA and WWE star as an interviewee. And that'll be like part 2 of the episode, and part 1 will be me kind of just yapping about my wrestling knowledge per se, and um, kind of talking about why I think it's like the best thing on this planet. The title of the episode is "Wrestling is the Greatest Art Form," and I stand by that opinion. So, that's gonna be, like, the first episode, and then, doing a, like, NCT K-pop episode and a Teen Wolf episode for, like, my first 3.
Oh, historic run. What do you mean? You're doing wrestling, NCT, and then Teen Wolf? The woman was too stunned to speak. What a run! I love
I
that.
know.
I want to nerd out about wrestling for a second. First off, are we allowed to break who the guest is, or is that a secret until the episode lands?
I didn't post it well, I guess I'm posting it on my Instagram in a couple days, so as long as
Okay.
this after that, then I'll say. Um
Uh, no, don't say it because I don't think it will. We're coming out probably tomorrow so that people can make it to the launch party. So yeah, everyone go to Maddie's Instagram. I will tag it in the description of the podcast. You can go see the announcement when it drops.
Oh, I
But
didn't even mention the launch party. Let me
yes,
say
yes,
it
yes,
real
yes.
quick. And we're doing a launch party March 5th as well that night in Hollywood at a hotel rooftop. So if you guys are in the LA area, be sure to come out. you can see where to RSVP at Maddy Mania Podcast on Instagram.
Amazing. We'll tag that in the description of the podcast. I only wish I could hop on a flight and travel halfway around the world to chat about to come to the launch party and chat more about wrestling, to be honest, because
No,
I will.
same.
The final couple of minutes of this interview will be me just nerding out about wrestling. I got into wrestling because of Tumblr. I remember there was a gift set of 3 studly men, and I was like, who are they? And it was the Shield. And
Oh
I
my
was like,
god.
for those who do not know, the Shield was what Seth Rollins, Roman Reigns, and Dean Ambrose used to be. Now, Dean Ambrose, I believe, isn't even in WWE anymore. He's wrestling under his old name, doing all sorts of normal, like, other stuff now. Hold on. Wait one moment. Well, oh my gosh. Wait, what's about to happen?
Wait.
My boys. I just saw one flash of them and I was like, oh, my boys, my other loves of my life. I'll never be over it. That era of my life, I needed them. They were like my anchor to reality. And they were what brought me into wrestling. I was like, 3 really hot guys, and they're all wearing like these military fatigues, and they're ripping through these, like, they're just getting rid of people. I'm like, oh my god, so hot. And then, of course, everything develops. Roman Reigns is made into this John Cena-esque figure. Dean Ambrose is kind of embroiled in all of this other stuff. And Seth Rollins is really quiet until he's really not. And that was my entry into wrestling. And then from there, Finn Balor, Sami Zayn, like my NXT babies that then have grown into these icons. I would love to chat to you, if it doesn't spoil any of the podcast, a little bit about how you got into wrestling. And if you're into it still, even like as like ongoing, what the kind of lay of the land is right now. Because the last time I checked in, I think Finn Balor had the heavyweight championship, and that was a while ago, like
Oh
years ago.
That's
Yeah.
funny because Elimination Chamber is this weekend and he's fighting CM Punk for the heavyweight title. So Punk
Oh,
has
and I
it.
had a terrible CM Punk phase where I was
I'm
fed
still in
up with
it.
the WWE. Yeah. Yes. Oh my gosh. My beautiful rebellious king. He's just everything. He was like I remember going back into the archives and watching his speech before he quit, where he just kind of ragged on the whole institution of WWE in Chicago after WrestleMania. I think it was,
Legend. Legend.
it'll never get better than that. Anyway, sorry, tell the Sophisticulture audience a little bit kind of about how you got into wrestling and what's so special also about the art form, because I
Yeah,
agree.
so I think it's something that, like, not everybody understands, which I totally get that, but I feel like every time, not when I tell somebody to watch it, but every time I, like, bring a friend that's outside of the world to a show, they always leave happy, like, "That was so much fun," like, "That was so much cooler than I expected." So one, I would say definitely the, like, live element of it, because it's a mix of, yes, it's a sport, yes, it's, like, stunt coordination, so it's like a movie, yes, it's, like, theater because they're telling stories. It's like all the things that you would see in one. So the, like,
Mm.
live experience is amazing, and I got into it through a little show called Tough Enough, which was about
Nice.
forming, like, the next WWE wrestler. Was 2011, I wanna say, so I was 11 at my grandma's house, just bored with my cousins, flipping through shows. We all liked, like, nerdy stuff, but also, like, sports, so we decided to watch Tough Enough, and then they had a commercial for, like, Monday Night Raw during the show, and I was like, "Oh, like, if I like this, then I guess I'll try to watch the Monday Night Raw thing and see." And so I end up watching
Gateway drug.
Yes.
Gateway drug.
It
Oh,
was over after, like, the first 5 minutes of Monday Night Raw. I was like, "This is, like, I've never seen anything like this in my life. What is happening?" Like, the drama, the sports aspect of it, and then I had to wait, like, a whole year until I went to my first, like, live show, but then, like, after that happened, then I, like, loved it even more because,
yeah.
like, the energy and the first show I went to was actually, like, on my birthday, and John Cena sang happy birthday, and I thought it was to me, but it was to Hornswoggle. But
Cinnamon. Oh, that's so gorgeous. I love it.
yeah, so it's been I was a Punk and Cena fan coming in because that was, like, the height of their feud for who was, like.
Yeah.
Yep, and still am to this day. I've gotten to meet both of them, and yeah, just oof, love me some wrestling.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Remind me that there were a couple of wrestlers that came out of Tough Enough. I can never remember who, but there were a few that got their start in that show.
Yeah, so there's, like, different reiterations of the show. The season that I watched, the person that won was, like, not somebody that stuck around for long, but, Cameron, who used to be with Naomi, the Funkadactyls, she.
Yes.
And there's this funny clip where Stone Cold asked her favorite match, and I think she said, like, Melina versus somebody, and he's like, "Of all the matches, that's their favorite match, Melina versus," and it was probably, like, back then, a 5-minute match, if that. So that's, like, a meme of her put on blast, and I think in, like, another iteration of when I watched it, Mandy Rose was on it. She might have been the runner-up, though, not the winner.
This is back in the day. This is like post America's Next Top Model. This is like when everyone's trying to get in on that reality TV show action. The
Yeah.
irony and the parallel and the poetry right now of talking about Tough Enough when we've just talked about Katseye and how they were formed. It's like reality TV is in the air right now. Critique and analysis of how these things work. Anyway, I was gonna ask because I've not been into wrestling for a very, very long while. What's going on with the New Day? I've missed them. How are my boys?
So unfortunately, Big E is on commentary now, or not commentary, like the broadcast team because he had a neck injury. So
Oh,
he is on commentary slash the broadcast team, but I'm pretty sure he's engaged to Michin slash Mia Yim's sister, so he has that going for him. Um,
nice.
a third member as like a comedy play, and his name's Grayson Waller, who really good wrestler, Aussie guy. He's cool. And then Kofi and Xavier are heels. So they're like
Where they
bad.
thrive.
They they get some glimmers of being able to thrive. I think they could do a bit more with them.
Yeah?
But they're funny, and like they're in that era where they're like helping put new talent over, I feel like, because they
Gotcha.
just had a match with this 21-year-old star named Javon Evans, another black guy who is like phenomenal in the ring. So
Nice.
yeah, they're doing their part, just not the same. Like, instead of New Day rocks, they're chanting the New Day sucks. So
Ah, the tides will turn once more, I hope. And I will let you go in a second because I know you need to head off. But I was just gonna say, Big E is for me. Big E at some point has to do a Paul Heyman run with someone. Like he has the gift of the gab, like or like Xavier too. Like truly the gift of the gab. Like when those three were together, it was just magnetic.
yeah,
They would it was an
100%.
era. And so I hope at some point Big E gets back in the ring if he can, not necessarily maybe in combat, but in a kind of a Heyman role, because the way he would ace that in my mind would be insane. Anyway, Maddy, thank you so much for joining us. Maddy Mania is going to be where all good podcasts can be streamed, and the first 3 episodes, as you've heard, are going to be bangers. So keep an ear out for that. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for
Anything else
having.
you want to plug before we go?
No, just like the socials and the pod, that's it. Seriously, appreciate it. And this is like off the pod, I guess, but like we should stay connected and like DM and stuff, because yeah.
100%. I've recognized the kindred spirit here right now
Yeah.
between wrestling and K-pop. Like we're on the same frequency. 100. Okay, and that was our conversation with Maddy. It was so much fun. I'm really excited to listen to this podcast now. I only read the press kit and I was going, "Oh, this is fantastic. Sounds like a lot of fun." And now I'm listening to what might be coming up. I'm like, you mean to tell me this is going to be wrestling, NCT, and then Teen Wolf? I am in. I'm in. I am in. So thank you so much, Maddy, for your time. I'm hopefully anybody that's listening that wants to go check that podcast out is stoked to do so. And we're going to end the podcast with a little hot take. Now, I don't think I have a hot take to give about the BAFTAs. I think it was an incredibly mismanaged conversation, an incredibly mismanaged situation. I think it was pretty obvious from the jump to a lot of people that this was an issue with the BBC and the BAFTAs and not with the individuals involved in the incident, because you have to understand that someone with Tourette's for that long in their life is going to have at the very least tried to put accommodations in place. And it seems as if everything was done to facilitate that. And then there were decisions made by the producers of the show and maybe even the BAFTAs to kind of override the choices that were made to handle this, the accommodations that were made to handle this, including putting a mic right next to John Davidson, which is not fair, knowing what he had said about how to mitigate any issue or offense on the broadcast. And I think a lot of people are also talking about how Warner Brothers stepped in and said, you need to cut this, which is what any studio would do. I don't think this is a issue of malpractice or some kind of mistake on the part of the BBC. They did have quite a long lead time into the broadcast, which is what they do on purpose for situations like this, and I can imagine is a pretty great accommodation considering you're going to have someone with Tourette's at the show who should be there to celebrate his film, which has made huge waves, if you don't already know, I swear, made huge waves, not just here in the UK, but generally in the independent film scene. And it actually caused an upset at the BAFTAs where Robert Aramayo won Best Actor over, Timothy Chalamet and, all these other people. And it was a big shock to a lot of us here in the UK that a Brit won, which is, you'd think this, oh, that doesn't, how could that possibly be? Trust me, it's a long story. I'm not going to get into it now. We're all very, very, very happy for him and happy for the film as well. So this seems to have been a setup on the part of the producers of the show. If it really, really was a setup or just a really, really bad bout of malpractice, I guess we'll never know. But my hot take this week, I think, is not going to be involved with the BAFTAs because I don't have anything particularly hot to say. What I do have something hot to say is, and I think I've already made a TikTok about it, so I've probably already started gaining ire from external forces for this take. I am finding discussions specifically by Brits about how Black Brits or Brits of color don't intervene and don't fight on behalf of against racism in these institutions as hard as Black Americans do. And I think the reason it's tempting for some commentators to say that is because they know there's been this rift between African Americans, Black Americans in America, and Black Brits, Afro Brits here in the UK, that there's been a rift growing, and that there may even be outside agitators intending to split that rift further politically. And so they know there's going to be some benefit culturally to throwing Black Brits under the bus for a little bit of attention from a certain group of Black Americans who want to hear that narrative about Black Brits. If you've lived any stretch of time here in the UK as a person of color, you'll know that fighting racism, specifically media-based racism in this country, is a daily occurrence, and dealing with the BBC's bias has been a fight that I have known has been happening since I have had consciousness, and I've existed in this country for 29 years, the entirety of the years I've been on Earth, right? I've been a British citizen in this country. I've watched as generation upon generation of people of color have tried to reform these systems. I could have never seen how diverse the BBC is now. I could have never believed that would have happened just 5, 10, 15 years ago. There have been major transformations in a lot of these institutions. The kinds of stories they tell are more diverse. They're less scared of telling diverse stories. We don't have to qualify them as much anymore. There is still that final hurdle to get over. And I want to leave those specific commissioning issues I have with the BBC out of this conversation, because it's the editorial decisions, specifically things just like what happened with the BAFTAs, that have not gotten better. How is it that you could not censor that word, but you were able to censor homophobic slurs that night, and you were certainly able to censor your own filmmaker, Akinola Davies Jr., when he said free Palestine? This is not now an issue of mistakes or something slipping through a net. This feels very intentional. And if you ask any Black Brit, and there are quite a lot of us within the progressive spaces, creators who have been fighting this fight. We were some of the first people raising concern that this was a BBC issue as opposed to an issue between people at an event, an issue of one man saying something offensive to two other incredibly decorated, honorable men who dealt with that incredibly well but shouldn't have had to. The issue stemmed, the black Brits and Brits of color in the UK immediately knew that this was a BBC thing. There were different discussions going on, discourse is discourse. And the reason the discourse was so extreme with this was because woke was being tested for a moment there. How do you reckon these two things? It's like, but it was actually quite simple when we got down to it. This was something everyone was apparently prepared for in the room. Many accommodations had been made to ensure something like this didn't happen on broadcast, and yet still a microphone was placed next to John Davidson, and it was not cut out of the broadcast. That does start to raise questions about whether or not this was done on purpose. It does. It's the logical conclusion. Let's not be gaslit. It's the logical conclusion of the data we have. I believe it is in the vested interest of the BBC to continue acting like this, and I believe they believe this is how to represent the country, and that it doesn't matter that they've put two different groups of marginalized communities at odds with one another for a little bit of headline clout. What not many people know is that the BAFTAs have been campaigning to be one of the major stops on the way to the Oscars, and the BBC, the BFI, and the BAFTAs have been crafting this trip through the London Film Festival, through the BAFTAs to the Oscars for a long while now, to try and beef up the British film industries, to bring more Hollywood talent into British arenas, to help elevate the profile of the British film industry. I think all of these efforts have been valiant. Alas, I believe this latest effort to create buzz around the ceremony may have shot all of that in the foot. I believe this current situation may make American companies more reticent, certainly, to stop on the British circuit, because what it shows, not only outside of the BBC in terms of how competent they are at censoring things, what it shows the global community is that there is a disregard in this country for the sensitivities. The statements from BAFTA and the BBC were good statements, but it doesn't mitigate the harm that was done. I wish I could sit here and give you some kind of action point or some kind of thing to do, right? I think I've long since held the belief that the BBC is a wing of powers beyond its control. And of course, because it's the British Broadcasting Corporation, you can imagine what those powers might be and what their vested interest is on a program like that. All I can tell you is that the BBC very rarely makes mistakes like this unless it's these kinds of mistakes. They can manage to censor many other things, and I'll leave it at that. So my rec of the week would be Testament of Anne Lee, if you're going to the cinemas, Flint on BBC iPlayer, and yes, I do understand the irony, but it was directed by Nakash Khalid. So again, the progression in the commissioning at the BBC is amazing. It's beyond what I could have expected in my lifetime. But yeah, anyway, different section of the Beeb, if you don't know. And if you're staying home this weekend, I would recommend Marty Supreme. I watched it this week. I was surprised how much I liked it. I may get my good friend Amaris on the podcast next week so we can hash it out, because she hated it. And between her and me, I think we could have a really, really good jam sesh and get to the bottom of this film. But yeah, those are my recs. That's us for this week. We'll catch you next week, Friday, live again. Inshallah. For those of you that are celebrating Ramadan Mubarak. For those of you celebrating Lent, have a happy and prosperous Lent. And we'll catch you next week as we lead up gently, slowly but surely, to the Academy Awards, Sunday, March 15th. Oh, and we have a virtual watch party that we are doing Sunday, March 15th. We will be broadcasting live to our YouTube channel, okay? We will be doing all sorts of fun stuff. We'll have tons of people coming in and giving their commentary before and during the broadcast, and we'll be watching, and you can also watch live. There should be a free option here in the UK. I think you can watch it via ITVX, the Oscars, and you can watch along with us and hear our reactions. And yeah, it's going to be a fun time. Grab your popcorn, grab your pizza, etc., so forth. And there'll be some special guests throughout the night. And yeah, see you there. Have a great week, y'all. See you next. Bye.